Welcome into episode 171 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin, who's a little crispy this morning. He's had a couple issues with some Wi-Fi and this, that, the other thing. So, I don't want to say Scott's like prone to get a suspension here for a slew foot, but he's in that type of mood today. So, Scotty, why don't you talk to the people? Are you really upset, or are you just kind of, it's one of those days for you?
Just one of those days, but I think it's gonna give me some fight. It's gonna give me some energy. More than the Bruins had in the third period last night. So I think it's going to be beneficial for the entire podcast, honestly.
I feel bad for the players in the scrum this morning after practice. You're going to be asking some hard-hitting questions. But yeah, no, so not to bury the lead, but Bridget, first of all, how are you? But the Bruins lost to the Oilers last night, 3-2. We'll dive into it. Bridget, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm tired, but I'm good.
Well, that's good. I'm glad we're all in a good mood to start this podcast.
See, so guys, my agitation will offset Bridget's sleepiness, so this is gonna be good.
I'm awake, guys. I'm awake.
Bridget's she's like the Bruins after 5 days off. Just
I'm like the Bruins.
On the face.
I'm like the Bruins after 5 beers till 3 a.m. in a Nashville bar on the on the road trip. That's what I'm like.
Well, they were pumped with their siblings in the crowd for those games. So, Bridget and Scott, I'll ask you this: if I were to tell you going into last night's game,
when are we doing the siblings pod?
Oh, that's a good point. I have 4 siblings, so it's gonna be the Brady Bunch of deep faces on here.
My brother doesn't know shit about hockey.
Perfect.
Neither do we.
But Melvin does.
Melvin does, yeah. So if I were to tell you guys going into last night that the Bruins are going to lose to the Oilers, but Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl will be kept at bay, you'd be probably pretty surprised, right? I mean, I feel like the Bruins kind of beat themselves last night.
Yeah, especially if you told me that they were up 2-0 after the first period. It looked like I didn't think they played great in the first, but they get the one goal, and then they get first looked like they got a second one on the power play from Krejci. Gets called back for offsides like 35 seconds before the goal. But then Krejci sets up Pasternak right at the buzzer with under a second to go. And you're thinking, wow, all right. They came out of that with the 2-0 lead, and they continue to keep McDavid at bay. And you're thinking, all right, they should have this. But they really just took their foot off the gas and kind of, especially offensively, like there was no real hard push to get a third. They seem to kind of be going through the motions a little bit, and that's they're going to have to guard against that because they're going to be facing a lot of teams that are more desperate than them down the stretch. They have this big lead. They don't need every single point. They don't really need to go all out, but at the same time you don't want bad habits to creep in. And at least last night, some did. They kind of started settling for outside shots. They got too cute and passed up some good chances. And Jim Montgomery said that after the game. And at the same time, they let the Oilers back in. I didn't think they were bad defensively. Like you said, they kept McDavid and Draisaitl at bay. All the goals were, one Grzelcyk blows an edge and it's a 4-on-1. It's like, I don't know, what are you going to do about that? Like, guys lose an edge. It happens. Second one, a rare Patrice Bergeron turnover, a bit of a miscommunication with McAvoy. Like, that never happens, so can't get worked up about that one. And then, the third one, kind of a moving screen. I don't think Swayman ever saw the shot, but he did misplay before. That's one thing to clean up is, his touch trying to move it to his defenseman was off.
Swayman said he didn't see it when we asked him after the game.
Yeah,
Scott was busy trying to run talk to Bergeron.
Yeah, no, I don't think he saw the shot. Like, I mean, clearly it beat him 5-hole from the point, so obviously he didn't see it. But just even before that though, like he kind of had the turnover that allowed the Oilers to keep possession. So just a little off. They just left the door open, and Edmonton took advantage.
Yeah, and so to the point that they were passing up shots, like simultaneously, I thought the third line got a few of their better chances at like when they were kind of in a lull. But I also saw Coyle pass up shots like several times that I thought he probably just made that extra pass when he didn't need to, and just like play more simple, just put it on net. Um, that line, like I said, at times it was doing the right thing and trying to get a little spark going. Like Frederick, I can recall like Frederick having a chance out in front. Bertuzzi put it out from behind the net to him, but that's kind of where I saw some of the overpassing and because like it ended up being turnovers by Coyle instead of shots on goal that maybe Frederick grabs a rebound off of or whatnot. And the first line was guilty of it too, where they were kind of overpassing, overthinking, and just a little bit passive. The best that they looked was on that power play that Krejci scored. And unfortunately, even Montgomery and the Bruins knew 20 seconds prior to Krejci scoring that it was offside. And what Montgomery said was he was hoping that someone shot it, it got deflected into the netting, and they got an offensive zone faceoff, because they had known right away that it was offside. So like their video people had already told them. So when Krejci teed it off and it went in, it was they knew what the result was going to be. But to like analyze the plays that led up to it, that power play unit actually looked really good.
You know, when I think about this game, it's just like, obviously, as we said off the top, McDavid and Draisaitl didn't really do a whole lot of anything. So if you're the Oilers, you can sit there and say, how often will that happen, right? But from a Bruins perspective, I mean, the Grizzly turnover, that's a nothing play. Like, you have possession, you're in the attacking zone. That's not something that was a systemic lapse. That was an individual blowing a tire and it goes the other way. So that's not a goal to worry about because it was just a one-off type thing. And honestly, I can probably count on like one hand in the last 20 years the amount of times I've seen Bergeron turn a puck over that led directly to a goal. And he also turned a puck over a second time when he went off the glass. But at that point, he was kind of in panic mode. And, you know, he and McAvoy just had a miscommunication there. That never happens, and it probably will never happen again. So those two goals allowed the Oilers back into the game, obviously. And then the third goal you guys touched on, it kind of happens when your foot's off the gas. What annoyed me is like, and look, it was their 9th regulation loss of the season. Okay, so let's keep some perspective here. And I don't mean you guys, I just mean in general, when we're discussing this Bruins team after a loss, like, yeah, we're going to talk about some negatives because we have to, but like, we understand it's not the end of the world. But like, what annoyed me watching that game, and Jim Montgomery commented on it afterwards, and maybe you guys have the direct quote in front of you at some point, but he commented on just how they were non-competitive. They were a non-competitive team offensively last night. And I thought that was the case up until, oh crap, what happens? We're down a goal with 5 minutes left, and all of a sudden Krejci's crushing guys in the forecheck and they're zipping the puck around. Quite simply, guys, they just weren't moving their feet, especially in that third period. They were not moving their feet, and it's why the Oilers were able to tie the game and get the go-ahead goal. And I watched that game and I said, you know what? When the final buzzer went, I said, they didn't deserve to win this game because they didn't play winning hockey in the final 20 minutes. Now, 99.9% of the time this year they have. And it was 100% of the time up until this game. They closed games out in the third period. But you know what? Lesson learned. They've been so good this year. It's not like they have to learn a ton of lessons. But again, it's a friendly reminder. Like, you're going to lose games, but in the back of their mind, they need to know you have to keep your skating game going or else you're screwed. It doesn't matter who you're playing, but especially in the playoffs, keep your feet moving. They started moving their feet when they realized they needed to tie the game. It's a long season. They're allowed a couple games here and there, but that's what jumped out to me. Their skating legs weren't there in the third period, and it cost them.
Yeah, and this is what they're going to have to guard against down the stretch here, because we know there's going to be some load management. We know they don't need every single point. We know other teams are more desperate than them. And yet you can't allow bad habits to creep in, so whether it's settling for shots from the outside, not getting to the net, not being aggressive enough on the forecheck, whatever it is, like all, like you said, just like the pure effort, the skating, they can't let that, be lax. Like, they can't let that go down the stretch. And it's going to be a challenge because again, like they're trying to walk that line of, yeah, we want to keep playing hard. We want to build our game towards the playoffs, but they also, want to make sure they're staying healthy and prioritizing, how much guys are playing and all that stuff. And it's, you know, those are often conflicting, but I think the big key though is that like when guys are on the ice, they have to be going all out. Like leave the minutes, the load management, all that, leave that up to Montgomery and the training staff. And, when they're on the ice, like they still have to find a way to kind of dig and make sure that they're playing as hard as they can and building up good habits and not letting some of the potentially bad habits like creep in. And again, we're talking about one loss that ended a 10-game winning streak, by the way. So yes, not worth panicking over at all, but it is sort of, a little bit of a preview of like what some of these games, these final 19 games down the stretch might be like for them, where, eh, they're they want to be playing the right way when the playoffs start, but how do you keep that up in the regular season when they really have very little to actually like tangentially play for the rest of the way?
Yeah, that was not a game. I don't expect a game like that from them in the playoffs. Like that's just not. I mean, I understand it could happen, but that it just doesn't seem likely that that's something they're gonna. That's the kind of effort they're gonna put forward when the playoffs start. But yeah, we've covered the issues with the offense, the energy, whatever. But on the very brief amount of time we got to see the new look power play with Orlov on it, and then that second unit that actually did better than the first unit. What did you guys think? Do you think that going back to that in the next few games could be something that gets their power play going?
I mean, I'd like to see them give it a little bit of a longer look. Like I don't want to pull the plug on Orlov getting a shot on that top unit after one game. But and I mean, they only had 2 power plays, so you're only talking about 4 minutes, and the second unit got quite a bit of that time, so it was probably only, I don't know, what was Orlov's power play time? I'm gonna guess it was right around 2 minutes, maybe. Yeah, 2:06 Orlov had on the power play, so that's not a ton of time. I would point out that they didn't have any shots on goal on either of their power plays. The only one was the Krejci one that would have been a goal but gets disallowed. So
And doesn't count as a shot because it technically never happened. They put the clock back.
Right. Yeah. So it's like it's not. It wasn't an immediate success. Like I would just say that it wasn't. It's not like they went out there and caught fire and holy crap, Orlov's bombing one timers all over the place. Like
But
now it still looks pretty sloppy. There's still work to do.
yeah, but think about it. Like, so the very first look they got on it, DeBrusque got hurt like 15 seconds into it. So like DeBrusque took like that shot up in the chest. Luckily, we asked Montgomery about it after the game, and he said it was just like a wind situation where the wind got knocked out of him. He came back and played the rest of the game. He came back like shortly after, but when he got off the ice, it didn't look good. But anyway, that's how that power play started. Was with Orlov on there for the first time. All of a sudden, 15 seconds in, timeout because DeBrusque's trying to get off the ice, and then it kind of threw off that power play, I thought. And then with that second unit, it was Krejci, Lindholm, Bertuzzi, McAvoy, and Zacha. And they had some really good passing going on. That pass from McAvoy all the way across from one dot to the other to Krejci was really nice, perfect. And he could have shot it too, but he went for the extra pass and Krejci teed it off. So I liked what that unit was able to do, and you see a new addition on that unit as well with Bertuzzi.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just need more time to see. With Orlov, obviously, as Scott said, it was a couple brief looks. It's you don't make a change and then just not give it room to breathe, right? So I need to see a little bit more, and I think this home and home with Detroit will probably be a good opportunity to see that. As far as the second unit goes, I'm a little conflicted because I feel like Pavel Zacha has been like one of the best zone entry and puck retrievers all year for the Bruins on the power play. Like when that second unit's on the ice, like there's a Krejci-esque calmness to his game with zone entries, but he has more quickness than Krejci. And like that's just like, what are you gonna do? Put him on the first unit and take away like Marchand or DeBrusque or Bergeron? I'm like, no, and Pasternak, no. So I mean, I think that second unit's where he's gonna be, and it's good to have balance on both units. But that's something I've picked up too. Is I just really I like his success rate at just retrieving pucks in the power play. He seems really good at that for me. But in general, I need to see a little bit more of these new looks to make an actual kind of assessment of them. One last thing I wanted to mention too that I noticed last night the Bruins weren't great in was puck possession. I didn't love their decision making. I thought they were turning the puck over too often, and I think that stems from the lack of skating game that they had. When your legs aren't moving, when your feet aren't moving, when you're not synchronized with your teammates out there, that's when you start turning the puck over and you're getting lazy with the passes because nobody's really moving. There's no mojo. So I think it all stems from the skating game. But I noticed that last night too. Like they were just a little stationary. I know one of the big talking points in Boston media when they try to nitpick things with David Pasternak, who's one of the best hockey players in the world, is that he turns the puck over a lot. And for the most part, I sit there and I laugh at it because I say, you know what? When you have the puck on your stick a lot, chances are you're going to turn it over more than others. But also, he's a 50, 60 goal scorer in this league. So, like, you take the good with the bad. But I will say, it is something he needs to work on because as good as he is, and as much as your success rides on him, if you're in an important playoff game, important time of the game, overtime, whatever, series altering type of game, you have to protect the puck in certain all throughout the whole game. But like last night, there was one play in particular, and I know this is nitpicking, but we do 3 episodes a week on the Bruins, so I'm going to talk about it, where there was under 5 minutes to go in the game, and he just kind of gave the puck away to Connor McDavid in the neutral zone. And McDavid comes down the ice with 4 minutes and 50 seconds left in the game on an odd man rush and like could have just iced the game. And it's just like you can't turn the puck over there with that guy on the ice. And it's just something that he just has to be a little bit better at it. That's all I'm saying. Like I understand how good he is, how important he is, and I know it's not the end of the world, but I would hate to see David Pasternak have a costly giveaway in the playoffs that leads to a goal against or something like that, and then have all the pundits be like, oh, see, he turns the puck over, he's a liability. Like I want him to prove those people wrong as opposed to, you know what I mean? So that's just something I noticed as well last night, in addition to the other stuff we talked about already.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between him turning it over because he's trying to move on the rush down the wing, one-on-one against a defenseman. Like that's where I'm okay with him taking chances. To your point, like if it's in the neutral zone or breaking out of the D zone, that's where I think he can be a little safer. And it's like you don't have to take chances in those parts of the ice, or at least not as many of them. Yeah, I mean he continues to lead the NHL in giveaways, and I know different arenas like record these stats differently, so there's some caveat there, but yeah, it's like it's all the guys who have the puck the most, but it's still not a category you want to be leading. So David Pastrnak has 90 giveaways as registered by the NHL on the season. Connor McDavid, who obviously touches the puck as much as anyone, is 11th with 65. Now, I know that's Connor McDavid, and like I'm not expecting Pastrnak or anyone else to be Connor McDavid. He is an all-time great player. But it is kind of like proof that you can have the puck a lot, you can be creative, and not lead the league in turnovers. So, yes, some cleaning up for sure. One last thing on the power play I just wanted to touch on. On Wednesday, I think it was, we talked to Brad Marchand after practice, and I asked him about the power play, and he said, basically like we need more movement. We need bodies moving. We need pucks moving faster. We've never been a good power play when we're stationary, and I think Marchand himself has at times been guilty of that. And I thought last night he was a couple of times where he would get the puck and just kind of stand there and hold it and like wait for something to open up. And when that works and that patience pays off and, Pasternak gets open and he hits a passing lane or whatever, it looks great. But there are times where like I see the puck get to Marchand on that right elbow and it's like, I want to see him either moving in or, towards the slot or going towards the net or circling out high or something to get the defense moving. I feel like too often he gets the puck over there at the right dot and just kind of like holds it for 5 seconds, waits for something to happen. And we know he can make things happen. And I just feel like I want to see him do that more. It's like just drive to the net, and even if it gets ugly, like create some chaos. Do more than just like wait for someone else to move around and open up.
Yeah, I mean, that's when, and Bridget, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that to follow up, but I would just say quickly, like that's when the Bruins power play to me is at its best. And that's kind of what you're talking about, Scott. Like when they're moving with and without the puck, when you have McAvoy in that top unit and he's circling around the offensive zone and Pasternak's going from circle to circle and giving different looks. I'm on my forehand, I'm on my offside. When Marchand starts buzzing, all the while you have Bergeron kind of in that bumper, like just reading everything like a little snake in the weeds. Like that's when they're most successful. You don't want to be stagnant and flat-footed because you're making the penalty killers' lives far too easy. And the goaltender only has to worry about like, okay, so Marchand has the puck on the right circle. All right, I see where Bergeron is. Okay, I know out of my peripherals, Pasternak's like here, he's creeping down. A little bit easier, But if everybody's moving and attacking and creating different looks, like you're talking about, Scott, that's when the Bruins pop is at its best. I think a lot of that stems from confidence when things are going well. So I think if they get a couple goals here and break through, that might happen. But until then, they're just kind of fighting it a little bit.
I guess one question and I know what my answer is, but was there anyone from the Bruins in that game that you thought was bringing the energy when other people weren't? Because I can't off the top of my head really pick out really one guy that was doing enough to kind of like lift everybody up.
I mean, I would say like Orlov's defending stood out as a positive. I don't know about opportunities to really like make things happen offensively, but I thought he was aggressive defending. He was stepping up on guys. He was a big part of the effort of shutting down McDavid. So I thought he was bringing intensity on defense. He knocked McDavid down behind the net once. He knocked Draisaitl down another time. So that stood out to me as someone who was bringing intensity, at least at the defensive end, and breaking up entries and all that. It's tough that there definitely weren't a lot of guys doing it.
I mean, I thought like AJ Greer was trying out there, trying to make an impact in the forward check. I thought Frederick was moving his feet pretty well at times. Hathaway, like those types of guys that like you have to bring that to be effective. I thought they were doing what they could, but it just wasn't there up and down the lineup, in my opinion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's not really anyone to like go over with that. I also want to talk about just the deep pairs. So changing the pairs again, Clifton out, and we see Forbort Grizzlick, which to me I just do not like as a pair at all.
I feel like you're reading my mind at times because I was gonna bring this up and I was gonna throw it to Scott as well because last night was if you're on board the Matt Grizzlick out of the lineup train because whatever X, Y, and Z, that turnover kind of fueled the fire for some. And I know all of us on this podcast know how good Matt Grizzlick is. But Scott, I don't know if you wanted to defend your fellow Terrier, maybe to some of the people out there saying when see he shouldn't be in there, but that was just more bad luck than anything.
Yeah, the turnover was bad luck. Like I can't get too worked up about that. Although he did lose an edge on another play too, which was odd. I was like, did he just not get a good skate sharpening in? I don't know, did his dad's bull gang like maybe not do a good enough job on the ice? Like I don't know what was going on. It was because a couple other guys lost edges too, so I don't know what was happening. But I thought, I mean, the thing with him and Forbort is like I didn't think they were bad. The Oilers really didn't get much when they were on the ice. I think they might have had like one or two shots against when the two of them were together. Um, but it's just not a natural fit. Like it feels like you're trying to like if he's there, if he's playing there come playoffs, assuming no injury elsewhere, it feels like you're just kind of forcing it. Like you're just trying to force a way to get Grizzly into the lineup. Like he's on his offside, he's on a third pairing with a defensive defenseman that I just don't think is really the ideal spot for him. And Forbort and Clifton have been really solid as a third pairing. And like that's more of kind of the natural type of third pairing that you would expect that's gonna, have some physicality, be able to handle a lot of D zone shifts. So it's like I'm fine with giving Grizzly a look there. I'd be fine with them having another game together at some point. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense like in the playoffs to force them into that spot when what you already had as a third pairing was really solid.
I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like I've said it before, I'll say it again. Like for me, it's the pairs. If the playoffs start tomorrow, it's McAvoy, Orlov, Lindholm, Carlo, and Forbort and Clifton. It's the most. There's chemistry on each pair. There's diversity on each pair. Each pair brings something different to the table for your team in a given situation. It's like that. It's like that line in Miracle when Herb Brooks says to Craig Patrick, "I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones." Like you can make the argument all day long. Matt Grzelcyk is a better hockey player than Derek Forbort and Connor Clifton, pound for pound. Like he has more skill. Like I get that, 100%. And if it wasn't for Dmitry Orlov's presence on this team, he would be in your top 4. But it's about redundancy. It's like Orlov brings what Grzelcyk brings, and if everybody's healthy, he brings what he brings in a skating game, in a transition game, but he has more finish and more polish offensively. But he also has a little bit more snarl and a little bit more experience. Size, experience. He was a top pairing guy on a cup winning team. Like it's that just leave it at that. So if anybody wants to argue about Grzelcyk over Orlov, objectively, you're wrong. And if you want to make the argument about him being on the third pair over Clifton or Forbort, it's not always about who's the more talented player. It's about what do you want that third pair to be for your team. And you can't tell me last night that Connor Clifton's physical presence wouldn't have helped that third pair. Clifton and Grzelcyk and Forbort, as Scott said, it's not a match made in heaven. There's no chemistry there. So that's my thoughts on it. And I don't like bringing it up every week because I feel like I'm speaking bad of a player that I really like in Grzelcyk, and he's like seems like an awesome kid, local kid, awesome family. Like it's nothing to do personally, but I'm looking at this roster and I'm trying to see what's best for them when they're healthy. And he's the odd man out if they're healthy, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of most, because it gives you the most cohesive and diverse defensive unit to help you in all situations over the course of a hockey game in a playoff series, if they're healthy.
And something that popped into my head too was remember when the deal to get Orlov and Hathaway was done, there was talk that Clifton was part of the deal. And I think that the fact that they weren't willing to part ways with Clifton as part of a deal for anything tells you that they want him in their top 6. Like if it's true that he was on the table and then they wanted to make sure that he stuck around, I think it tells you exactly what you need to know about how they want their third pair to shake out, and they want to keep them in the top 6, and that that kind of does leave Grizzly as the odd man out.
Yeah. I actually don't think Clifton was ever on the table. I think that's just a completely erroneous report where not really sure where that came from, but yeah, I think Clifton was always staying put. So
well, it makes sense. I wouldn't have thought they would want to trade him if they didn't have to, but either way, I do think that third pair is strongest with Forbert, Clifton. The Grizzly turnover was not because of the pair, but it just looked awkward. Like almost like when we saw the Forbert McAvoy pair for a while, we were like, this just is an awkward pair. It just doesn't look nice. I don't know. You're still in the situation where you have a good problem and you have 7 good defensemen that you have to, try to rotate around. But I do think Clifton was kind of missed in that game against the Oilers.
So, Scott, I know you're on a tight schedule with practice soon. So I just wanted to bring up one other thing they mentioned on the broadcast. I noticed it too. Without Taylor Hall in the lineup, I think there is a pretty clear lack of speed. I know it's a very obvious statement, but there's a bit of a lack of speed taken out of the Bruins lineup there. And does that concern you, and Bridget, does that concern you if they have to enter the playoffs without Taylor Hall's speed and backing off defenders as a forward unit? Is that something that worries you at all? Obviously, they brought in Tyler Bertuzzi because they knew these guys were on IR, but Bertuzzi, speed's not his game. A lot is his game. It's not speed. So does that worry you if he's, say, not back in time for the playoffs, at least round 1?
I mean, it's not ideal, but I don't think it's like a deal breaker for them. I think they still have enough speed and they can still attack enough different ways that not super concerned about. I mean, DeBrusk still brings some to the top line. Pasternak, like not really a blazer, but he can obviously put defenses on their heels as well. And then that third line, Bertuzzi, Coyle, Frederick, like they can do it a different way. They can do it with power. They can do it with forechecking. And we had kind of talked about this during that stretch where Hall, was going a while without points. Like we hadn't really been seeing him use his speed as much as last year or years past, where like I had called him like an automatic zone entry because defenses just had to back off so much, and like you weren't seeing that quite as much anyway. So it's not like that was a huge part of the Bruins offense where they were just running scoring chances through him using a speed down the wing all the time. Like it's nice to have, and yeah, if and when he comes back and they get that back, it'll be an asset. But I don't think it's a huge loss because I think this team should still have enough other ways to attack.
Yeah, but I get Brian's point because he is that is something different that he can bring. And I think that at times when he's doing it well, it is really dangerous. And I did notice that's another person yesterday. You're watching the game and you're like, I wonder what this looks like with Hall here. If he were to be playing in that game, but we have not gotten another update. I mean, he was supposedly going for a second opinion, and then we just haven't heard what the second opinion results were. I did see Nick Foligno with a crutch and, his foot, or not his foot, his leg, he was just crutching along slowly down the hallway. So he still seems to be kind of far away, but we haven't heard updates on these guys.
Has anybody been asked about those updates and scrums, guys, or is the media kind of staying away from that question?
No, Montgomery was asked it was either Monday or Wednesday after one of their practices this week. and said like no new update. And I mean, they'll be asked about it again. You know, I don't know, we might ask Montgomery. We're recording this just before Friday's practice, so we might be asked then. But I kind of feel like that's going to be the company line. Like, I think they're just going to leave it open ended and be like, we don't really know. And then, you know, basically like until one or both of those guys step on the ice for practice, we're not going to hear a whole lot. Is just my guess. Maybe we keep asking, and at some point they give us more. But I kind of get the sense that they're just going to be hush hush for a while.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to keep asking because, like I said, it was known, and they mentioned that he was going for another opinion. So people are going to just keep asking to try to see what that opinion might have been. But yeah, his absence is you can notice. I know Bertuzzi's a good replacement for him, but I still feel like that line is much better off with Hall. So hopefully by the playoffs he gets back, but we'll just keep an eye on whatever the updates may be for him.
Well, and that line changes. Like, it would be great if you got some time before the playoffs, even just like the last couple games, maybe, because that line could also change. Like, if it's going to be Bertuzzi flips over to the right side and Frederick goes to the fourth line, like that's a different look. Like, you know, Hall, Coyle, Bertuzzi is a very different look than anything they've had on that line this season.
So the speaking of Bertuzzi, the Bruins play his former team home and home this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. I think they're both 1:00 games or 1:30 or something like that. So the next time we speak, I presume will be after probably the second of those games. Was there anything you guys wanted to discuss before we let Scott out of here so we can go pepper the Bruins brass with questions after practice?
I'm good.
I don't think so. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond, obviously. Like, not that, you know, one regular season loss to the Oilers, like, I don't even think it really qualifies as like quote unquote adversity, but they, you know, they do take pride in not losing 2 in a row and all that. So I think you would expect a pretty strong response Saturday, and then we'll see about Sunday. Montgomery had said that he didn't think he was going to start resting guys yet because they had the 4 days off this week. So even though it's 3 and 4 and there's travel in there, he thought everyone would be fine. But, you know, I wonder if that changes. Like, I wonder if he does rest anyone that Sunday game.
Yeah. I just thought of something. So Bruins are 1:00 Saturday and 1:30 Sunday. But Saturday, I just want to plug my broadcast. So after the Bruins game Saturday, there's a bunch of Hockey East playoff games. So I'm broadcasting the UMass Lowell at UConn game at 4 p.m. on NESN Plus. So after the Bruins game, just keep watching hockey. Go watch that game on NESN Plus.
Are all 3 of our teams in the playoffs this year?
UMass is already out.
They are?
UMass not anymore.
Oh, sorry, Bridget.
They got knocked out by the Andre Gasso machine at BC. Bruins prospect heating up down the stretch.
Well, then go Warriors. I know Scott's a big Merrimack fan, so we'll see if BU plays Merrimack in the finals, and we'll have to have a little face-off at the Garden or something, if that's even how the bracket shakes out. But BU
it would be, because BU's the top seed. Merrimack's the 2. It's the highest Merrimack's ever finished in the Hockey East regular season.
Hell
so
yeah,
good for them. Vermont upsetting Maine ruined a potential BU-BC quarterfinal. That would have been the matchup on Saturdays, but now it's BU Vermont. I think Merrimack has BC, right? I believe so. Yeah, you get all 4 of those games right after Bruins on Saturday.
Yeah, so hockey all day is really what you should be doing. All day Saturday.
Merrimack is definitely America's team. I think they'll be the whole nation will be pulling for the Warriors if they go to the national tournament. So probably gonna win. Actually, they're probably ranked anyway, so they might be anyway. But regardless,
they're actually not ranked high enough to make it. Like, as
all right. Enough out of you. Go Warriors. You're just mad the Minutemen are done.
I'm just telling you the truth. BU is the only team that's ranked high enough right now to make it.
Brian,
I think Merrimack Yeah, I think Merrimack might barely be in, but like they probably need to win another game or two.
They're one of
guarantee
those ones
themselves.
where they'll get knocked out when one of the at-large, like one of the tournament winners, is a non-ranked team. They're right on the bubble. They could pull themselves into it. So Brian, there you go. But to be safe, they'll have to win the conference tournament.
Will you two stop pissing on my parade, please?
Sorry.
I mean, I will say, in all fairness, when I was at Merrimack for 4 years, I think I went to like 2 games, so I'm not really a diehard. I'm more of just a general fan, but yeah. Okay, so yeah, listen to Bridget on the broadcast, and thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys after the weekend's games.